Hey, welcome to today's Artist Chat. It's Harmony. I'm a watercolor artist, and you are watching the 4th episode of Harmony and Friends, casual conversations about art and business. We are actually waiting for our 4th artist. Oh, she just made it. All right. Wonderful. I'm so excited. This worked out. Hello, everyone.
Hi, sorry about
I
that.
can hear you.
I don't know. I think it was that
Sure.
my browser. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Samantha.
Okay.
I'm so happy
Okay.
you're here.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just be quiet now. I'm just like relieved to be here.
I'm so sorry. You missed the intro, but it's not that complicated. I'll walk you through it as we go. I'm just going to do a really quick intro. You can catch your breath. All righty. So today's topic is pretty interesting, I think. While I tell you about it, I'm going to put up a little question for everyone in the audience because I'm really curious. Tell us if you have ever tried to build a regular art practice yourself and how it went for you so far. I'm really curious because right now is this strange, exciting time of the year. You're kind of stuck between the holidays and New Year's. You don't know how to feel. You kind of want to relax and enjoy and not do much, but you're also itching to maybe set some art goals and see what potential there is for you in the next year. So with this live stream, you can do both. You can get cozy, relax, cuddle up in your PJs with a nice hot beverage and listen to these artists who are incredible and accomplished. And they're going to tell you all about their personal stories, how they have been able to build a consistent, maybe even a daily art practice and what that has done for them. So that being said, we are going to get everyone up on the screen and start with some introductions. First of all, welcome. Thank you for joining. Awesome. I'm going to wave too. Okay, so we'll do introductions. You each have 2 to 3 minutes at the beginning. We'll just go around in a circle and you can tell us all about yourself as an artist, your art business, anything you'd like us to know, but don't dive too far into the topic of the day yet because we'll get to that next. So Tara, I'm going to unmute you and everyone and you can kick it off.
Awesome. Thank you. So glad to be here. And I have to mention seeing names I recognize in the YouTube comments over there just like made my heart feel warm and welcome. So I'm Tara Kate. I call myself a bird artist and illustrator. I'm I think more properly termed a natural history illustrator. I have a PhD in biology, so I started out as an academician and taught in a university setting and then transitioned out and became a full-time artist, closing in on 7 years ago now. So I didn't go to art school. And my current big project is I'm illustrating a book on the birds of Oregon. My husband is a professional ornithologist, and he and a really large team of scientists are doing a massive study of the birds of Oregon, and I get to illustrate their book.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. And like you're so specialized, I'm really excited to hear how you built up all that skill.
Yeah, I'm super niched down, no doubt about it.
Will, how about you?
Real quick, I also recognize someone in the comment section too, so that's kind of neat. Monkey Mintaka. So I started as an illustrator in 1992 and was mostly doing editorial work and advertising work, and then slowly kind of as I saw stock illustration taking over the industry, I thought, the editorial is going to really get hit. And so I started to transition into children's books. And as I was doing that, my wife was teaching school, and it's kind of a long story, but basically she got sick and couldn't teach school anymore. So we lost her income and then had to try to figure out how to make more money to support the family. We had three boys. And in doing so, I learned that I needed to do more than wait for clients to pick me. Basically, I needed to generate projects that would make money, and so that's what I want to talk about today. Some of that stuff, but so that's kind of brought me to where I am now, where I spend my time divided between personal projects, some freelance projects, and the work that I do at svslearn.com. So that's where I am right now. Yeah.
That's incredible. I'm sorry to hear how you ended up building all those streams of income. That's a rough one, but I bet a lot of people in the audience do know you from that, because you have done it so successfully with SVS Learn, and I think maybe you'll talk about different approaches to sell in person, and you also have or co-host an amazing podcast, 3-Point Perspective. So I think lots and lots to be learned from you as well. So thank you for joining. Samantha, how about you? Tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm in my studio in Brooklyn, New York, and I am, I guess first, just the umbrella is an artist, but I was for many years a graphic designer. And so, my Instagram handle still has design in it for that reason. And, but as my kids were getting older and I really wanted to get back to drawing things by hand and also keep track of what their milestones were and our day-to-day adventures, I started illustrating everything that we did every day. And so it became this sort of dual, like, diary journal gift to my kids slash, art making practice. So and then I ended up writing 2 books about it. And so I'm like, this is my topic, kind of, keeping a practice, an ongoing practice, and the benefits, sort of the multi-level benefits to doing so. And so I'm happy to be here and happy to talk about maybe some tricks, and then also just some basic, simple ideas that, might help people.
Thank you so much. I know there's quite a few people that are really excited to hear, how you manage, I think, especially this long-term kind of approach, how you've been so consistent. I can't wait. So we're going to get into that soon. I think we're going to skip the first question. What we're doing now is another kind of quick fire round. So this is just to set the scene so everyone knows where you're coming from as you then share your personal stories. We already talked, I think, about the art businesses that you have. So we can skip over that question, but something a little more topical for today. We'll start with you, Tara, again. What kind of consistent art practice have you established just within a minute or two?
So I kind of have 2 consistent art practices. One is just a daily sketching practice where I just show up and draw birds rather spontaneously. I use photo reference, but trying to use lots of different poses and trying to just be like really being in touch with sketching. And then because I'm working on a book, I've got that show up and grind out the illustrations, keep up with the schedule, meet the deadlines kind of practice.
That sounds exciting and like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
All right, thanks for sharing. Will, how about you? What kind of consistent art practice do you have?
So I'm working on a children's book right now that I'm self-publishing, and it was interesting because so to continue on with my life story a little bit, my wife, who was sick, passed away, and I ended up getting remarried, and so that was about almost 4 years ago, and with my current wife, she's always worked a job, she's always had a 9 to 5, and so I'm like talking about the projects that I want to do and everything, and and I've learned to be very strict on my schedule, but even the personal projects, you know, like I set a deadline for when I want to have this thing finished, and then I act like it was given to me by a client, you know.
Mm.
And so explaining that to her, where she's like, "Well, do you have to work today?" I'm like, "Yeah," she, you know, and she's like, "Well, you know, you could take off," and I'm like, "Yeah, I could, and we could definitely shift stuff around and do something, and I could pick up this work later on, you know." And she's like, over the years that we've been married, she's really learned a lot about how I've been successful, and it's been really good. And you know, she's really complimentary in saying, "Wow, I don't think I could do that," you know, in forcing myself to hold to that schedule. But you know, I want to get this book done, and it's actually I'm sharing the process on my YouTube channel. It's a pickleball book for children, and so it's actually a story, you know, and we play pickleball, and so that's kind of, you know, why I ended up doing that. But yeah, every day there's something to be worked on. There's just a lot in doing your own book, and hiring a designer to design it, and working with a print broker to get a good deal, and then I'm going to have it on Amazon. So there's all that, you know, making the formatting for the digital version, and then also the formatting for Amazon is a little bit different for their print on demand. So there's tasks, and I write a list of all the things that I need to get done, and then I try to figure out, you know, when I'm going to work on those, and yeah, I have to be my own slave driver. You know?
Well, it seems to be working to be your own boss here and set those deadlines, because I know you've, you know, yeah, published things, had a Kickstarter, had all sorts of things that you've completed. Because I think for so many artists, that is the struggle. It's starting is not the problem. Having ideas is not, you know, the thing that's missing, but it's how do you actually see it through all the way to the end and also get it to a point where it's monetized. So
Yeah.
excited to hear a little more about that later. Samantha, how about you? What kind of consistent art practice have you established?
Well, similarly, I am a freelance, you know, professional creative person. Was a graphic designer, then it sort of became more illustration. But I've always had clients, and I've always had deadlines, and so, you know, showing up to work every day is just partly, you know, it's I have to do it. And the schedule that I create, you know, I like a ritual. And so I just, you know, get up and I go to work and I do my job, and, you know, I'm definitely more flexible. And once we had kids, I was the one who could be there for them a little bit more, and well, actually a lot more. And well, that's not true. It depends. But we're both very involved. But I'm the one who could, you know, say, okay, I'll take, so, you know, one to the doctor or what. Anyway, it was the journal and the daily practice of creating a full record of each day that became compulsive for me. It just became like I had to do it every day. It just, and I don't even, for a really long time, I thought, what am I doing this for? Like, what is my problem? I mean, I think it was a way for me to channel like sort of this like fear of raising these two little humans, and sort of just, I mean, I've tried to put it into words before, but I don't know why I was so determined to do it every day until I got a book deal, and you know, a literary rep came to me and said, you have to write your story, and people were inspired by it. And then I realized, okay, there was a reason for the madness, you know? And so I just want to say that, you know, if you really are seeing improvement and you really have, you know, I mean, maybe this is one of your later questions, so I don't want to skip ahead, but, you know, it's the wanting. I mean, what kind of consistent art practice have I established? It's like therapy, you know. So
That's beautiful. I'm so glad that even though you didn't know really why you were doing it, that you stuck with it because yeah, you shared it with the world in the end. So that's pretty cool. Before we jump to the next question, I'm going to jump in to give a little bit of my perspective too, not too much, but because I think something that maybe I have going on that the other artists here don't is that I'm not a full-time artist. And I know that can also then kind of impact like where do you find the time if you have a job in addition to all of this. And so for me, I try to do what you all said and Will, what you presented with kind of the project. So I'm pretty, I kind of take all that organization from my job and make these big templates and project plans and calculate everything, like how many hours do I need to do one painting? How many paintings do I need for this pattern or this project? And I try to plan out my weeks that way. Even though I have to admit, I do not create art every day. I just usually, I have too many other things to do for the art business that I can't only create every day, if that makes sense. Because if I'm lucky, maybe I have an hour or two or something, right? I have a job, I have a child, family. I just don't have hours and hours every day, unfortunately, to work on art or the art business. But I'm pretty consistent. Let's say 95% of the days I will do something for the art business. So whether it's something like prepping a video like this, getting the interview information out. If it is painting, wonderful. If it's digitizing some artwork, great. Whatever it is, I make sure that there's one task a day that I'm completing or making progress on. So I think maybe for those of you who haven't yet reached the professional full-time artist stage, that's something to take away too. It is possible to at least make significant progress, even if you maybe cannot make a full painting or whatever it is you're trying to do every day. So don't give up just because of that.
Absolutely.
All right. So with that, I'm super curious because like I said, I have at best 1 to 2 hours a day for the art business, if I'm lucky. But how about all you? How much time per day on average do you spend creating?
So for me, it varies depending upon how much like admin or other things that are happening. So my world is kind of a hybrid of what Samantha and Will talked about. With Samantha, I share that obsession of daily creation. I think there's something about it that touches some psychological need I have. And that need is, I know, tied to accomplishment. I think, I came from a family in which accomplishment and personal worth were pretty tightly tied together. And so I still see showing up and making art, as kind of part of like my daily accomplishment that helps me to feel like I fulfilled my role in the world somehow. But in terms of how much time I spend creating, I certainly do at least some daily sketch, like I said. So if I've got a lot of time, I may do a whole spread, a whole full page spread, and go into a lot of detail or sketch a lot of different poses. And some days, if I'm running short on time, it's just 5 minutes. I am a streak builder. I have this thing about building streaks, and I actually keep up with my streaks. So I have an app. So I'm showing really how obsessive I really am. My current streak today will be day 99, but I've done the last leap year, a couple of years ago, I did the whole 366 just because I wanted to.
Wow.
So it can be anywhere from 5 minutes to, if I'm here working on an illustration and I get to work at about 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning, work till noon, take off for lunch, come back and work till 4. So 6 hours until my energy runs out. But so it can be very intense some days, and other days not so much.
That's so encouraging that, yes, if you have 6 hours, amazing. But even, if you can keep the streak going, even if it's just 5 minutes, I think that's something that many of us could accomplish if we really put our mind to it. So that's quite encouraging. Will, how about you?
I mirror Tara a little bit there, as far as like there's a lot of business and admin and and other things that have to happen. And so there are some days where I don't get to draw. And the streak app is kind of interesting idea. I've never heard of that before. Which would be like, even if you only get 5 minutes, you're still keeping that streak alive. So that's a cool idea. I like that. And I don't have a problem doing the art part. I've had students when I taught at UVU who they were the last ones to set up in a painting class, right? They would talk, and then they finally get set up, and then they finally get painting, and then they were the first ones to tear down. And I would tell them sometimes, in a broad statement, like, if this is you, it seems to me like you don't really like painting, because look at the other students who are there and they get their stuff set up, and they know they've only got 2.5 hours in the studio class, and so they're maximizing their time, and then the last one's to clean up. And so I think that can be, I've seen kids transition from being the first to the latter. So I know that it's it's not just because you don't have an art habit every day of drawing, or maybe you procrastinate, doesn't mean that you can't develop that, and that it can't become completely something that you love doing. For me, I don't have a problem anymore in getting the art part done. I save that as the dessert. I have to get through the tasks that have to be done in order for the project to be successful. So if it's building a website, or meeting with someone who's going to help me build a website, or just setting up a bank account, all those things have to be checked off the list. And I tend to actually throw those in first, so that I can eat your peas first and have your dessert later, kind of thing.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah, that makes total sense. It was actually on one of your podcasts that kind of started me off, 3-4 years ago. It was an episode that was titled something like, "Is it too late to start to draw or become an illustrator?" And I remember, I don't know if it was you or one of your co-hosts, but you said, like, for whatever, how many months or a year, like, just draw. It doesn't even matter. Just try to improve your skill. So I bought this little notebook, maybe one of the only notebooks I've ever actually used in my big pile of notebooks. And I made this tiny list because I calculated it, because I didn't listen to it on like January 1st. I listened to it a few weeks in or something. And then I was like, okay, if I want to get to X hundred hours in this year, how many hours per week would I have to draw? And I had these tiny little boxes to check off, and I would sit there, and it was like 17.5 hours every week or something. And I sat there, and that was just my goal. Just get in your hours. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Just get it done. And that was really helpful. And the reason I'm saying this, it helped me build the habit that you're mentioning. So at that point, like, I wanted to draw, and I was getting better, and it was just making sure I could like find the time, but it was always the first thing I wanted to do. So I didn't really need to track it anymore as a goal or a habit to create. So that was really, really helpful for me. And I'm so grateful for that tip I took you up on, and it's worked ever since. I still don't draw daily, but it's made a huge difference in learning from basically nothing to being, well, not great, but a whole lot better now. So thank you. Samantha, how about you? How much time per day do you spend creating?
Well, it's a little, the answer is a little different now, but for years, and I should just speak to it like this, because that is my normal practice, is that I probably spend about, it's the question I get, one of the 5 questions or so I get all the time: how much time do I spend working in my sketchbook? And it's generally about an hour to 3 hours a day, which is a luxury, and I realize that, but it is because it's my job, and I've completely transformed my capabilities and my clientele and my whole world through that practice. But if it is a hobby, that is a lot of time. So I always tell people, that's how much time I spend, but it's probably not realistic for a lot of people. And definitely, just opening it up and starting to work on something, or, spending just a few minutes a day, or even just doing a spread that you fill a spread, you know, that captures like a week's worth
Mm.
of memories, you know. Again, it's very much like what I teach and what I do is all about being inspired by our experiences in the world around us. And that's, so my book is called, first book is Draw Your Day, the second book is Draw Your World. So that's my whole thing is, you know, finding the time. And what, you know, somebody wrote in the comments, you know, my life is boring. I mean, what do I draw? You know, and I get that all the time. There's always something. I mean, if you set up a 30-day challenge to draw your coffee in the morning, by the 30th day, your coffee cup is going to be better than the first one, you know, and that might only take you 5 or 10 minutes. So, and you can write a little something about how you're feeling or whatever. You can make it sort of like a journal entry. How you know, it's like kind of, I always compare it to exercise. Like, how did you feel during your run or your whatever? And sometimes you're just like, oh, I don't really want to be doing this. And you could just draw like a whatever coffee cup. But anyway, there's a million different ways of taking inspiration or pulling inspiration from the mundane and from the ordinary and getting better at drawing at the same time. So, I mean, I could talk about this for like the whole entire hour. So
you talk about a little more soon. No, but that's great. I think it's a beautiful view of life too, because there's all these famous quotes about it, right? Like that is what life is. It's not all these, you know, one-off incredible moments of which you have maybe 5 in a life or something, but every day that is your life. And so I think it's a beautiful way to kind of commemorate just, yes, the everyday, which might not seem so great, but that's where all the memories are made. And so I think it's a beautiful approach you've taken.
Draw your laundry, you know, draw it.
Hey,
Great. You can practice drawing the folds in the fabric. I mean, that's like the perfect way of practicing shading and line, and yeah. So
that's such an inspiring take. I really like that. All right, so we are going to jump in now. And we're going to give each of you about 5 to 10 minutes, and you can just speak more to what you've shared so far, to your art practice, any advice you have. And I'll give you a few questions if you like to kind of guide the conversation. But at any point you can say, you know what, actually, this is something else I'm thinking I want to share. So don't be bound by these questions, but they're there to help you. And I also can display the picture that each of you sent me. So I am going to start off here with Tara. And one of the first questions I will share here is, how have you managed to stay consistent for so long? You've talked about doing streaks for a whole year. Wow, I can't even imagine. So please tell us how you managed to do that.
Well, actually, I had just written a note to myself, and I apologize if it looked like I was texting or something. I was actually looking to make sure I knew the name of the app that I use. It really is called Streaks. I don't know if it's available for Android. I use it on an iPhone, and that actually, in part, answers part of this question: is how I've managed to stay consistent for so long. Is tracking the daily streak really makes such a huge difference for me. One of the things that I think happens, and I'm sure that Samantha and Will and can both attest to this, is that at some point we start to develop this self accountability, that we stop having to have some accountability to somebody outside ourselves. We don't necessarily have to have a deadline or a client. At some point we really figure out how to be accountable to ourselves. And I didn't have that skill as a young person. And I say young person because I'm in my 60s now. But I can remember as a young woman, especially like in my mid to late 20s, I was very inconsistent. And as an example of how inconsistent I was, I can remember starting household tasks like vacuuming the floor and getting distracted and putting the vacuum cleaner down. And then this is true, I would literally step over the vacuum cleaner for like days, if not weeks. It would just sit there.
Yeah.
That's how like distractible and inconsistent and sort of disorganized and chaotic I was. And what started to change that was running. Actually, I became a runner, and I got really hooked on showing up every day. And also, I somehow along the way, I was thinking about this morning when I was out walking the dog, actually. There was something else that just kept calling to me about this notion of self-discipline and about these people that I saw around me that seemed to have these magnificent obsessions, that were like so into what they were doing and so committed. And I wanted that. I think I was envious of that. I know I was envious of that. And so for a long time, I didn't really have a vocation that I really loved. I actually started out as a nurse, and it was a practical career, but it wasn't like what my heart called me to do. And when I started figuring out that I was into birds and started being a bird watcher, was what started calling me toward this very birdie life that I love now. And now I'm married to a professional ornithologist. So it's like birds are us, man. We just like live birds every day. And I think that also has a lot to do with how I've managed to stay so consistent, particularly in my artistic specialty, is that, I don't know what other couples talk about in the morning. We don't have kids. We have a dog. So we do talk about him. But most of the time we're talking about birds. It's Douglas saying where he's going this morning to go, census birds, because he counts and collects data all the time. Or he's talking about the student that he's working with whose thesis he's going to be advising or whatever. And so birds are part of the daily conversation. And so I think that also has become just the fabric of our lives, just showing up with this particular taxa, and showing up with these creatures that my life sort of revolves around in a weird and wonderful sort of way. So I guess I kind of have a sort of a strange lifestyle in a way, but that really does feed into the inspiration and the ideas and the conversation about, he says, have you drawn a penguin yet? And I say, no. And then an idea pops into my head. And so yesterday I spent the morning drawing penguins. So so yeah, I guess I just confessed that I'm a total weirdo.
No, but I think there's a nugget of wisdom there. So, okay, we might not all have partners that, maybe we don't have partners. And if we do, they might not be obsessed with the same artistic topic, right? So even if they aren't, and you definitely set up your life quite well there. It's
totally by accident. I don't take any credit for it at all.
But I think there is something to be said about connecting in the artist community, right? So do make sure, I think, that you connect, be it in person, be it at workshops, be it online, be it in live streams like this. Like, there's so many other people who are fired up about the same topic, and maybe your partner is, you know who I'm talking to, is probably sick of hearing about illustration and art at this point. Thanks for watching anyway. But there's a lot of people that will not get tired of it, and will also kind of push you on with their enthusiasm and have that accountability to each other, and just seeing other people constantly creating. I think trying to take that as inspiration and not being intimidated by, people are getting there faster, or they're better, or they keep going and I keep stopping. I think being inspired by it and trying to build connections with those people can do a lot for your art practice too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I do have artist friendships and people that I meet with every week or every other week to just talk about it from the art side of things, which also helps a lot in terms of staying consistent and showing up, and also helping it to stay fresh. Because I think the downside to the lifestyle I have is that there are some days when I think, I'm just not inspired by any picture I see, and there's no bird I want to draw.
And you can only do birds.
And so, there's times when I do feel dry, and having friendships, and also just allowing myself to say, okay, just 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and just move on. And I don't have to be inspired all the time.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. I think that's also good, right? Not to hold yourself accountable, but not to beat yourself down. And just some days are not going to be perfect, whatever, move on. So I have one more little question for you, and I'm going to bring up your sketchbook. And it's going to be a little shorter of a question.
Sure. Just flag me down when you need me to stop.
No. We just want to make sure I get to the others too, because it's so interesting what you're saying. The hour will be over and I won't have stopped you, so I can't do that. So let me just drag you over to this spot, and then I'm going to get your little sketchbook up. Thanks for bearing with me.
Sure.
Here we go. All right. So I'll hide this question in a second so we can see Samantha again. But either you can answer this question or anything else you want to share about the view here. But I was wondering, how did your skills improve as a result of your regular art practice? So yeah, either answer that or tell us about the photo that we're displaying here.
Well, I'll start with the photo because I really love this spread. So I use, for my daily sketching practice, I use an app called eBird. It's ebird.org, ebird.org. It's hosted by the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology. And it's a site where birders all over the world upload their photos of the birds they've seen. And so this particular day, which was a little over a year ago, it looks like it was 12/12/21 is the date on that. I pulled up a picture at random of a bird called a white-breasted water hen. I had never even heard of white-breasted water hen. And one of the things that's really cool about it is that you can then navigate over and see many different photos of the same species. And when I did, this particular photographer had just taken several different photos of this one individual bird. And so I sat there sketching this bird in several different positions, and that speaks more directly to your question about how I've seen my skills improve, or what has this done for my skills, is that because a lot of bird illustration is done with birds in profile, it's really easy to kind of fall into looking at birds in a particular position. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I push myself to do is to draw these animals from many different positions. I like drawing birds from behind. So having that bird walking away, drawing a bird where I can only see part of the bill and part of the face. Then in the upper left corner, the bird was preening itself and doing its feather maintenance. And so just engaging with all of those different behavioral activities that these animals do every day really pushes me to know these animals really well. I've just every aspect of this has changed. I really, really, really know what birds look like. And I know lots and lots and lots of details about what birds look like. And so when I see a photo, I'm not just like seeing, oh, there's the wing. I'm also saying, okay, these feathers are in this position, or, oh, wow, that bird's got weird feather shapes, or things about toes. Okay, yes, I have a birdie foot fetish. There's something about drawing bird feet that is just so fun for me. And yeah, so it really is an obsession, but it's kind of a glorious obsession in that the longer I do it, and I fall in love with these details, and then I get really interested in how can I make that look more realistic? How can I make that look more like what it is I'm trying to depict? And now I'm even trying to like push myself to get looser and say, okay, I'm really good at being tight. Now can I work to be a little bit looser in my drawing and a little bit less obsessed with details, and how can I be more gestural and expressive? So maybe that answer was kind of all over the place, but drawing daily has just been the bomb. I
like that conclusion. That's pretty good. I think we can just end here now because that's the takeaway for the day. Sorry, guys. That's no, but I can see how drawing daily really makes you see much deeper than you would if you just sketched a bird once, right? A month or something. You're not going to notice all these intricacies. You're not going to get good at the detail and be able to zoom out and see, well, now how I can interpret this more in a non-realistic way. So I think that's a good takeaway, that if you push your skill further through practice, you're going to notice all these other things that you can learn. So it can always be fresh and new. So that's pretty fun. Thank you for sharing. All righty. So Will, I'm going to get a few questions up for you here next, but while you speak, I'm going to have just one more question here for the audience. So please do leave us some info in the comments. Maybe if it's a question, we can get to it at the end. Because what I'm wondering is, this isn't for you, Will, this is for the audience. What is the biggest thing holding you back from creating art daily? How are you going to try to address that challenge? Or if you don't know how, what's your question about creating art daily? Please let us know. So
I think we most of us do things that we think will have a good payout, right? We spend our time doing things that that will have a reward, and we procrastinate the things that we don't think will have a good reward. So if you knew there was, $100 bill outside your door, you'd rush to go open the door and get the $100 bill, right? And for me, and I mentioned earlier, one of my biggest motivators is to be able to have a career with my art, to be able to make money. It's the reality. For some people, that's not the goal, and that's totally fine. There are all kinds of different goals, but for me, if I'm gonna do this thing called art and be able to stay in it, I have to make things that people will love. And if I'm gonna make things that people will love, I have to love it first, right? And so Tara mentioned, doing something that you're already kind of passionate about. And for her, it's the birds things, which my sister's birder in Florida, and I'll have to show her your stuff, because she's so into it. I made these when back in 2010, I believe, or 9, a couple of ebooks for Amazon, because it first became available where you could just upload your book, and I made 3 books, and they did really well. The reason they did really well was because there weren't any ebooks on Amazon at that time. So I was one of the first to market, right?
wow.
After I made those, I realized I wasn't passionate about them, and they weren't that great. And I theorized that publishers are going to start uploading their books, and if I kept doing books like I was doing, mine would slowly get forgotten about. And I actually had a friend who was doing the same thing, and they kept going, and that's exactly what happened. So I didn't waste time working on things that I didn't care about. What I did do was I spent time working on something that I did care about, which was to start selling classes online. And because I love to teach. And one of the reasons that I love to teach was I felt like I didn't get good instruction in the university that I went to. I did get some. Most of the time it was from the part-time faculty that came in. The full-time faculty, they had really good there were some really good instruction, but I don't know. I think that in teaching art, it's really easy to get complacent in you just have the students show up, and you have them put their stuff up, and you kind of critique it, and it's an easy job, and you don't have to do much more than that. I wanted more, and it was frustrating to me that I wasn't getting what I felt were good answers on how to make a good image, how to design a good image. It was more like, well, I would do this or I would do that, and they would make it into a good image, but I didn't know what they were thinking about, right? So I wanted to figure that out, and when I started to figure out how to make good images, I was like, okay, I'm going to break this down. Anyway, long story short on that led to svslearn.com and working with Jake Parker and Lee White, and I loved working on those classes. It also led to me making this book, What They Don't Teach in Art School, which is basically a business book for artists, and it's the stuff that the art faculty doesn't really know about because they're not in the trenches doing freelance anymore. They're teaching, and so they don't, and that stuff changes over time, and they don't really know what's going on. And but that came from passion. And so how I'm trying to answer this question is, if I think you have to figure out what you're really passionate about, and that will help you find the projects that you should be working on, because that's where you're gonna, I mean, like I'm sure, Tara, you can't wait to bring your book to the community of birders, right? I mean, like, and all the people that they're in that community. And likewise for myself, this pickleball book that I'm working on right now, I know I've already sold 1,000 copies based on the interest that I've had from, I mean, I've been introduced to the who's who in pickleball because it's kind of an Arizona thing, and there are people that are dying to get this book, and I'm dying to give it to them, and so I think you have to once you find a project like that, sometimes the project finds you, then it's really easy to show up every day and have that daily practice because you're working towards a goal. And I see a lot of people that, they sketch things. There was a comment in the comment section about, about good practice versus volume. And I'm definitely in that good practice camp of, practice every day. If you're not practicing the right things, isn't going to help you as much. I'm sure there's still benefit to getting pencil mileage, but practicing the things that you don't like to draw that are hard are going to help you more than practicing the same things. And so, I'd see my students' sketchbooks, and I'm like, I see that you're really good at doing this one thing. You're really good at it, and that's great. Now look at this, this figure over here. This is where we need to work on now. This is the next thing. But yeah, I think
advice none of us wanted to hear. Okay, we all just want to do the fun stuff.
hands. Unfortunately, you got to draw hands. The AI still can't draw hands yet.
That's funny. All right. Thank you so much. I think you've answered this question pretty well, but you also have a pretty cool project you did. You've done tons of cool projects, but you have a photo that you've given me to share. So I'm going to bring that up, and maybe you can share a little more about that project, how you did it, and the impact it had on you as a professional artist as well for your business. So that is going up now.
Oh yeah. So yeah, the littles, little heroes, and I have a book here too that I'm just kind of holding up that I did for that project. So that was a daily practice challenge of just doing little fan art pieces, and it was just going to be a Sunday afternoon, pick it up whenever I could, like doodle. And I was going to post it to my Instagram. And then after I got about 20 of them, I had people saying, well, where can I buy a print of this? And I didn't have any prints or anything, and, so then I thought, maybe this could be a thing. And, my students at UVU were going to this. They were all asking if they could have the deadline for one of the projects moved because they were going to Comic-Con in Salt Lake. And I'm like, what is that even? I didn't even, this was around 2016, and I wasn't in the comics world at all. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna sell our stuff at a table at this comic convention. So I'm like, all right, I'll give you guys extra credit if you're doing that there, because, and I'll come up and look at it. So I came up, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, this, I never even knew that. See, as a children's book illustrator, my audience doesn't have a wallet. and they can't really vote for my book, right? So it's the parents that you have to appeal to. And I was going, this is really cool because the people that are buying your art are the ones that are enjoying it. The end result is for them, So one thing led to another, and I found myself going, okay, I'm going to do a Kickstarter, and to make this book. There's 100 in this book right here, and yeah, it just turned into its own thing, and I ended up having a business partner who would take it to different cities, and at one point he was going to 20 shows a year, and we did really, really well with it. And then COVID kind of came in and kind of really, really dampened that business. But it was a good third side hustle for me, something that I never planned to do. And it was neat because I knew that I could take my iPad wherever I was going, to the doctor's office or anything. And I made a list, because for this product, it all depended on the idea. So the ideas had to be great. And of course, the ones that are in the biggest in the picture don't have the best ideas, but some of them have really good ideas. But I'd keep a list of ideas for different characters. I'd write down all the characters I wanted to do, and then I'd have a list of ideas, and I'd send people out to dinner if they gave me an idea that I used. And so then I would just always have one or two that I was working on whenever I would go anywhere. And that's a great daily art habit to have, where you look at the whole project and you're like, okay, I have to have 100 of these to make a book. So what does that look like? How many do I have to do a week? How fast am I? How do I get the ideas? It would have been torture if I had to start on, because getting the ideas was the hardest part. If I had to finish one, and then, okay, what am I going to do for this next one? And then you stare at a blank piece of paper. That doesn't work. So I would ask people all the time, seeing what I did with these other characters, what would you do? So Darth Maul with the double baby bottle nipple, that was my son's idea. I was like, what would you do with Darth Maul? And he's like, I don't know, maybe he's got two nipples on his baby bottle. I'm like, that's it. You're going to dinner. So.
Wow, that's super cool. Yeah, I really like the advice. And I think, even like you said, you weren't working full-time on this. You were maybe a full-time artist, but you have lots of different income streams and projects. And so I think even if someone is not working full-time as an artist, that's a great tip to take with them, right? Find a way that I think it's Stacy from Gingerbread who says, create art in the margins of your life, because for so many of us, that is the realistic scenario. We got 15 minutes walking there, okay, on the walk, on your commute, whatever, brainstorm, and then take your iPad with you, take your sketchpad with you at the doctor's office. I think what you're saying is really helpful for those who are going into 2023 and want to figure out, how can I do this every single day without having huge blocks of time? I think that's a pretty cool approach. So thank you. That was so helpful. I'm going to take this down now and have a few questions for Samantha. All right. So do you want a question, or do you want to share a little bit more? I know you were thinking about some things earlier in the question rounds. Do you have that ready to go? Like a prompt?
No. I mean, I have things I can say, and then
please
see if you want to ask me anything. Well, I think that Tara and Will definitely touched on a lot of things, and it made me take a few notes. But there's, if we're speaking to people who have other jobs and they just want to have, a daily creative practice, I think the most important thing to remember is there's an idea that we have, right? In our head. And then when we put pen to paper, if it comes out very different, it's going to come out usually very different than what's in our head. And that can be very frustrating, even from when we're 5 years old, and, the kid next to us could draw better than we, and it's, if you're filled with angst and stress around it, do something else, right? It should be joyful. But there should always be some challenge as well. And that's what Will was saying, we get caught up in, I used to sort of do these doodles around my notebooks when I was in school. It's like, again, sort of meditative. But then fast forward all these years, and the one thing that really intimidated me, and my sister could draw people so well, and I would just look at her and look at other artists' work and just be like, oh, I can't do that. I can draw, this thing, or even an animal, like really pretty well, but just the idea of drawing a person that resembles them, like has likeness. I mean, I don't draw one thing like Tara, and I also don't make up things like Will. I draw what I see, and I draw things pretty literally. And for me, that's the challenge, is to, try and get what's in my head on paper. And so what I decided to do was, every year on my kid's birthday, I would draw a portrait of them. It wasn't really enough practice, but it was all feeding into that idea of like, this is a memory keeping thing that I was sort of giving to us as a family and to my kids. And so then I was like, well, this is not really enough, right? I need to keep pushing myself. And so then I decided to do, I collect a lot of quotes. And so I just had this idea one day to start, drawing small portraits next to the quotes that I had collected. And it turned into a small book of 70. So it's sort of like that coffee cup idea, like by the end, I was just like, okay, I can do this. And now I'm doing, figure drawing classes, and I actually can speak to drawing. I feel like I feel like the daily practice and just that pushing, it improved my skills and my own skills. I always have a hard time with this idea of critiquing art, because, being good at something, when it comes to art, it's just, I think that's what a lot of teachers sort of push. And another reason why some people like turn away from art, because they didn't get a good critique and think they're not good. And, I think that there's a way of pulling out something positive in anybody's work, and then like saying, let's focus on that. What can we do with that? And everything is beautiful and everything has possibility, it's art. So, and anyway, I'm going on tangents, but there's also, so you have to want it. If you don't enjoy it, there's no part of you that enjoys it, and you're just like, I wish I could draw, but I'm just miserable doing it. Just don't do, take up knitting, or like sew, or find another creative outlet. Like you have to want it, because if you don't want it, it's just going to be this idea that's like a burden, and like, I didn't stick with it, I didn't, and it's kind of what Tara was saying, like you have to find your thing, and so not every day is going to feel good. Not every day you're going to feel like you produce something that you're proud of, but it's just a part of the growing pains and process. And it's just important to push through it and not tear it out, and don't crumple it up and throw it away. Like, it's good to look back and see your improvements and see how far you've come. That's part of the whole, the benefit of it all, is to like, but wow, man, like that first portrait I did of my son, it's like, whew, I mean, it's there, and I have to look at it, and it's uncomfortable to look at it, but I've gotten a lot better, and now I don't know, there's so much more I could say, but I feel like, do you have a question?
Yeah, let me, it was really helpful. No, I think that's you are all giving us a little tough love, but I think it's helpful. It's actually loving tough love, because I'm definitely guilty of ripping out my bad sketches and, hiding them, but I don't throw them away. I have them in a separate folder. It's called Beginnings. And I'm like, no, I did those, but we don't have to look at them every day. But I think it is good to keep them and to see the progress, because one day, hopefully, you will be proud of that progression and where you started.
Yeah, and then there might be a time when you're like, oh, yeah, I don't need this in my life anymore. I can get rid of it.
Right.
But you know, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I've brought up one of your sketchbooks here. And I would love to know, this is not actually a question that I've prepped you for. So let's see if you feel comfortable answering it. It's not a horrible one, but because I saw some comments, right, coming in about like, well, my life's boring, or I don't know what to draw. But how do you pick every day? You know, you can't draw your whole day. So in your art journal practice, how do you pick what is going to be the one thing that makes it onto the page?
Well, this is something that I've done more so in my more recent practice. This is from 2 summers ago. So, but I'm still sort of going this way where I do sort of, I like to take a snapshot of something that represents the day or the mood or the feeling. But what I've done so much, and what I think that people who know my work kind of think of me as like, I fit all sorts of things together on a page. And, you know, I like, speaking of like finding the little moments during the day where you can slip it in, like I would stand in line at the checkout, you know, at Trader Joe's, if there's a long line, and just like push my cart drawing things, you know, I mean, I just fit it in. I was just like compulsive, you know, I just needed to so whether it's one thing, like a hero image, I call it, I have a Skillshare class that's talks about just what we're discussing. So whether it's like a hero image, like that, the wet leaves, you know, it was a rainy, very, very rainy, wet day. And I had this idea of like, how I want to get that wet feel, you know, the rain and the leaves sort of just sitting there on the step outside of our little house. And so that was like a challenge, you know, I mean, I draw leaves all the time, but just trying to get that they were sitting in like this sort of puddle was like a fun challenge for me. And it also really represented the mood of the day. And then, you know, like one thing, what I talk about this a lot, like one hero image, those 3 plants. First, I liked the way they matched with the page on the left.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of tend to like do that. I'll connect things through color or whatever, just building like a nice composition. Or I do like to think of the whole spread, even though it's 2 very separate days. But again, it was like, oh, I love drawing wood grain. Like maybe what happens is I have a little note there that I was walking with my friend Irina and her little dog. And so in my, like, it brings me right back. Like, I know, I remember that day. I remember where we were. I remember where it was. And so whether it's like a lot of little things and you're writing down every little detail, or just like one image, it can bring you back and help you remember a special time, or a hard time, or a crappy, wet, rainy day where we couldn't go out, you know, whatever. It's so it's a matter, it's like, for me, it's like, what will sort of bring me back, but also what do I want to draw, right? So it's that balance of like, well, I really kind of wanted to draw those wet leaves and see if I could figure that out. And then the same with the other side, you know, I just was like, oh, it was this great little, I mean, I could tell you like sort of about where that was, but I won't bore you with that. That's like the journal part. So anyway, does that answer your question a little?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's a lot of things. Sometimes it's like, I love to draw from memory, life, and reference. And I talk about the benefits of all 3: drawing from reference photos, drawing from life, where you're looking at something 3-dimensional and you know, which is just a very different experience. And then also from memory. And I also love the challenge of, and I talk about this a lot, is drawing the same thing all 3 ways. So drawing something from life, and then taking a photo and drawing it from memory. From reference. And then, just like sitting away from it all and drawing it from memory, and like sort of seeing which one you like the best. See how it feels, see what you noticed, how a lot of times I'll prefer the one that's from memory, because I just, I had already drawn it twice.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's so many tricks, there's so many ways to like challenge yourself and find ways of inspiring yourself to have a daily practice.
Mhm. So
is
that's
that
such a cool
helpful?
exercise. Yeah, I think that really helps, and I think it's interesting to hear. And a lot, you've all really said that similar thing, that yes, challenge yourself. You need to grow, right? That's one of the target is the repetition and trying things that are difficult, because you're doing this because your goal for a lot of our viewers here is to build an art business, or at least to get good at drawing, whatever it is that your personal target is. But at the same time, never to lose the fun. So if it's all just grinding and you're pushing yourself, then find a different way. There's so many ways to be inspired, to have ideas, to come up with a concept that's uniquely you as an artist, that you're going to love, even though you might not love every day. You'll love the project as a whole and that growing process. So I think that's some pretty solid advice. Samantha, I have one question. It's not actually about your art, but I wasn't able to ask you at the beginning. I checked in with the other artists. Do you have a few minutes to stay later? It's already over the 1 hour that
Yeah.
you stay a little? Okay, great.
I'm
But
fine.
I have
Yeah.
one more question, and I'm going to throw it into the round. So whoever wants to jump on it, go ahead. You can all answer it if you like. And that would be here. What did you find was the biggest benefit to establishing a daily or regular art practice? And while you think about that, 1 second, sorry. Audience, please, everyone watching, if you have any questions for the artists, now is a great time to get them in the chat, and then I'll bring up a few once we've gotten through this question. So Samantha, sorry, now go ahead.
It's a really quick answer, but you get better. The only way you improve is to have is to practice. The only way you improve. People say how, and they look at my work, and I've been drawing since I was like, as long as I can remember. I grew up in a family of artists. I went to an art school. It's like, it's in my, so to expect to be somewhere where somebody who's been drawing I didn't come out just being able to draw. Some people can. Some people, did. They just have a gift. I think my skills have it's just been, I've practiced. If you want to get good at something, you got to fight for it. You have to work at it. I don't really understand what other benefit there would be other than like getting better and making money and having a life around it and being joyful and having it be like, it's art. It's like, I don't know.
Oh, you just gave us like 5 extra benefits right there, Samantha.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take over the answer, but please.
No, I love it. And I so agree with you, because I remember when I was a teenager or a kid, I thought I wasn't talented. I wasn't artistic enough. Like I wanted to be. I love being creative, but I saw other people draw in art class, and I was like, yeah, I don't got it, And I didn't realize at the time that it is a skill that can be learned. So yes, some people might be born with more talent.
Exactly.
Fair enough, right? But none of them come out of the womb a master artist. They've just spent, every day of their childhood or something drawing, while I wasn't. And so if I had stuck with it then, I'd be a lot better, but I didn't. But I got, back to it in my 30s, and I'm so glad I did, because it's kind of day and night between a few years ago when I started back up and now. So I completely agree. It's possible to learn how to draw and learn how to create art. So don't question that. All right. Who else wants to jump in on this one?
I'll jump in and just say, I'll build on that a little bit and just say, yeah, the getting good gives you confidence, so that you know that when you want to attempt a project, there's a good chance that it'll be profitable, you know. And being paralyzed, the opposite of that is, you know, if I don't think that my efforts are going to bear fruit, why go through the effort, you know? And man, that is, it gives you so much freedom in your life to be your own boss and to set your own hours and to come and go when you want. And you know, I still set the alarm when I don't have to, because I want to get going on that day and accomplish, but I'm doing it for me. And yeah, that daily practice is, and you know, and getting your skills good just gives you so much more freedom in life and enjoyment, fulfillment.
That's beautiful. That's incredibly meaningful, what both of you said. It's not just getting better at drawing, but it's all the joy and the freedom and accomplishing a goal that you really want to achieve and proving to yourself, right, that you can do it. I think also really helps with kind of your confidence and self-worth and the way that you approach the world. So, wow, this is quite a heavy but beautiful answer. Tara, how about you?
Well, I just to dovetail on what Samantha and Will said, you know, basically every opportunity I get right now, all of the professional opportunities and the things that I get to do are rooted in that daily art practice. I mean, if I hadn't really gotten committed to a daily art practice, I would not be a full-time artist. I would not be illustrating a book. I would not get to collaborate with people. I wouldn't be in this conversation. I mean, it's all, you know, and I just finished an exhibition downtown, and that exhibition was, a lot of the work that was in that exhibition came out of my daily art practice. You know, it just, it's everything. You know, it's all of the benefits that I experience in my daily life as an artist are really rooted in showing up every day.
Thank you. Yeah, I have talking about, I think you kind of answered one of the audience questions that I'm going to bring up there, because you said some of the work ended up being in the exhibit there. And so Arati Devasher, I'm hoping I don't mispronounce your name. I'm sorry if I do. But Arati is asking, is it always a sketchbook you use for your daily practice, or is it sometimes a finished piece? And I'm also interested in that. For me, I don't personally do a ton of sketching. My sketches the focus is always to get to a finished piece. So personally, whatever stage I'm at, whether that's painting or sketching, I just call that my daily art practice if I'm able to create. How about all of you?
I definitely have a sketchbook practice. There is something I find very, very satisfying and quite addictive to filling up sketchbooks and doing sketchbook spreads. So there's something about that really turns me on. But I do sometimes work on finished pieces. In fact, the frame piece that's there in the back actually started out as a sketchbook piece. And some of the work that was exhibited in that show that just finished started out, you know, in sketchbooks and then turned into finished pieces. But largely, for my daily, you know, like just daily sketching practice, it's in a sketchbook.
For me, they're kind of the same. Like I do finish all my pieces in my sketchbook, and I use them for promotion. I use them to make prints. I have, I mean, you saw in that example, like I really do finish that's part of my challenge every day, or for every page. It's not actually every day anymore, is to get to a place where I feel I'm finished with it. So, and it's complete, and, you know, if I tore it out, I could frame it, kind of thing. So it's like the process to it. And I leave a lot of the history of the process in my work. You can see the pencil lines, and you can see, you know, the building up of the pain, and where I might have like not been as happy with something, and I worked at it a little more. And you can only really see that in real life, you know. So if I photograph it or scan it, you can't really see all of that as clearly. But I think that you know, I need to, for me, it might be good to have a sketchbook where it's just more. I mean, I have a ton of books. I mean, there's like a pile of books, right? I like constantly have sketchbooks around, but my real sketchbook that I make them by hand.
Wow.
I finish every day a page, every page.
Wow. That's impressive.
Mm.
Will, do you want to answer?
I am bad. I don't draw in a sketchbook. I draw on the iPad.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah, and part of it, someone had a comment in the comment sections of feeling guilty. It was Emma about doing daily practice, and that's me. I always draw it seems like everything I'm drawing is for a project. And I rarely give myself the chance to do, like, even I did some pieces for fun, but I wanted to put art on. We live in a weird community, like it's a it's like a little resort for like RVs and stuff, and so people put like paintings on the outside of their house. You'd know it if you it makes sense if you saw it. It doesn't look. So I was like, oh, I could make a painting. So I made some for the outside of the house, like fun desert scenes, but in my illustrated style. And so I let myself do that. So I'm like, I work on fun stuff, but they're always for a purpose, you know. And so I'm addicted to like projects and getting those done. And yeah, I probably should. My two buddies, Jake and Lee, get after me for not keeping a sketchbook sometimes. Like, you don't draw in a sketchbook.
I'm with you. I know I should, but I'm just happy if I am creating, period. If it's not in the format that it should be, I really don't care. As long as I'm creating, that works for me. Let's take one or two more quick questions here. So Leanne Land Art asks, how do you stay inspired? I definitely find I go through highs and lows with this.
I could start on that one, because I had a time where I couldn't find the will to draw, and that was after my wife passed away. I was I mean I wanted, like, it was like a month I hadn't drawn anything, and I tried to draw something, and I still have it. It was these little doodles of little children's faces, and it was drudgery. I was forcing myself. It was uninspired, and I stopped. And then it was like another month went by, and I was like when am I going to start drawing again? I have to draw, but I had just no desire, none at all. And then I had always wanted to do this, this project. It was in my mind for years that I
It's
was
a
going
good
to do it.
book. I have it. You should get it.
Oh, do you? I knew I was going to do it. And I kept going, well, I'll, just procrastinating, and like, I'll get it done. I'll do it. And that was actually the project that got me back into doing stuff again. I made some drawings for that book, and just working on that got me kind of back into it. So when people say, how do you stay inspired? I think there are times where we get like clinically depressed in different ways. Like we fight through all kinds of stuff in our lives, and I don't know if there's one answer to that question. I do know, like Tara mentioned, running. I find that if I don't do daily exercise, I have like no will to do anything. It's bizarre, but we exercise every day, and it gets the day going. And so I am a big advocate of a daily exercise. I mean, you get those. They scientifically, they can prove that people that exercise tend to be more stable and happy, because they get the endorphins going, and they can. It's just good stuff. So
yeah, And I think I've said this before on a previous podcast too. And like you were saying, sometimes what you were describing was incredibly difficult. And sometimes there's just down days that you just have to learn to manage your energy and your emotions, in the sense that if you're having a bad day, maybe that's like Tara was saying, that's the day you do a 5-minute sketch, or maybe you work on something, if you can muster it, to move your art business forward that isn't creative, because there are so many other admin things, right? So maybe you can be productive without doing a ton of creative things if you're just not there. Because personally, I find if I push myself on days that I am feeling off, I don't create anything beautiful anyway. So it's kind of a waste of time, in my opinion. It's never artwork that I am pleased with. So I am in that camp that thinks regular artwork is important, but you can give yourself an off day here or there. I might be the only one in this round, but I think it's okay not to draw every single day. If that means you take a rest, my thing's a bath. Like, if the world is ending for me, just give me a book and a bath, leave me alone. I'm not drawing in the bath. Okay. I'm just shutting the door. And that's okay. And then next day will be better and I'll get back to it. Samantha, how about you?
Yeah, I was just, I mean, it brought up a lot, and you know, and Will, I'm so sorry about, I'm glad, and I'm very happy that you're now have a new lovely partner. And but I do think that if you know, one of the main the umbrella idea of like Draw Your Day and Draw Your World, which are my two books, is just, you know, finding the beauty in every day. And if you're not in a good place, you're just not going to see it, and you're not going to want to. But I do think that, you know, art making is therapy, and that it is so tied to other people seeing it. But there is a way to create art that is just for art's sake, because you have to do it, because it helps you get through things. I mean, this year has been tough for me. You know, my son went off to college. It didn't go very well. You know, we're just, you know, we've got some stuff going on, and I haven't been as regular and as seeing, you know, it's been a different kind of year for me. And I have made things and I've been, you know, I've gone through some pages of my sketchbook that I don't want to show it. I did them for me. I'm not showing. I've taken a break from posting through the holidays. That's unusual for me. I mean, I've been posting like regularly on social media, my journal pages, which are supposed to be, you know, private. So there's been something like a little interesting about that. It's a whole other discussion. But you know, my whole life has been like, well, I need to hold this back. This is kind of private. I'm not going to actually like, or I'll hide certain things, or I'll only sort of subtly talk about something that happened in my life because I'm sharing it, because the world is seeing it, because I have a lot of followers on Instagram. And so like, you know, but if you separate some process, even if it's a separate sketchbook, you know, this could be like your really private, you know, sketchbook where you just get it out, or you know, you just literally take your paints and put down color. It doesn't have to look like anything. I mean, I talk about abstract art and collage and color and line in both of my books. And I draw things very realistically, but I also do the other. And I'm just as proud of that work as I am over, you know, drawing the person that looks like the person. You know, I think it's just really important to see art for art's sake sometimes.
That's beautiful, because I think so much of us, when we are running or trying to build an art business, we do think of almost everything we create as, okay, how can I monetize this? Or how can I use this for social media? Social media must be fed. It's insatiable. But that there is so much value to just creating for yourself too. So I think that is a wonderful reminder that sometimes when we are down in the dumps, that it can help, and we don't need to add that pressure on ourselves that it needs to be good or it needs to become something,
or even seen. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe you know, yeah.
That's really good advice. That I can see how that helps you keep going too, and keep up those streaks. And because if it's not constantly being judged even by yourself, then you can create more freely. That's beautiful. Tara, did you want to jump into?
Oh boy, so badly. You just said something that really, really hit me. Was you talked about social media being insatiable, and you said something to the effect of that social media must be fed. And my response to that was, no, the soul must be fed. I think I left Instagram this past year, and it has been one of the healthiest things I could have done for my art practice, to stop making art in order to be seen, and to truly unplug from what other people think about my art, and whether or not people respond to it or not became irrelevant. And I mean, this could be a whole nother conversation, but I think there's several things about a daily practice and social media that don't go together. And Samantha touched on this, and not creating to be seen changes the dynamic in our relationship to our art in ways that you can't anticipate. And that you really do get a freedom and a liberation to be bad at times, or to, one of my go-to, she said, how do you stay inspired? If I'm not feeling inspired, and you can always tell when you look at my sketchbook, because I'll draw a flying bird. It's easy, it's fast, no judgy. I can draw in 5 minutes or less. So some days I pause the streak. The streak has a little pause function. And if things are too crazy, or I also have struggled with depression and anxiety, then pause the streak, walk away. Family comes first. Other things come first. I think there's definitely times when life just does not allow us to have that kind of creative expression. But I think if you think about it as you're investing in yourself, and that you're doing this for your own joy and pleasure. I know this makes me emotional, but there's a real importance to that I think social media just sucks the life out of us. And if we start to invest in ourselves and show up for ourselves, there's an ownership that happens that is so precious and so hard to come by. And so, yeah, that is part of what inspires me and keeps me going every day, is that sense of, sorry, I get so emotional when I talk about this, because it feels so important to me, and there's so much love involved with it. That we get the privilege and joy of showing up this way. And then that we get to somehow contribute that to the world, and it makes the world a better place somehow, whether people see it or not.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we need people to be making art more and more these days, and not for social media, not just to make us see the world and look at something differently, that you don't see even just the most ordinary thing the same way as when you draw it. And we all need that these days. It just takes us into the moment, away from all the chaos and all the craziness. And, it just makes us better people, whether anybody's seeing anything of it. It's just, it's really important.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah.
So yeah, one thing I noticed was, as far as creating things just for social media, I noticed a lot of our students were making single characters, or just like a head study, or really simple drawings, and their whole Instagram was filled with almost like the same looking portrait head or character design or something, and I was saying, you're not designing a full picture. You're not you're not there's so many other skills in art that you're not learning, because you're trying to feed that machine of being seen every day. And the easiest way to do that is to do a simpler drawing. And then they couldn't design a whole picture. That's where I came up with a Draw 50 Things challenge, which was a really complex image with at least 50 items in it that's designed with one focal point, right? So it's really tough to do. And you're not going to be able to just whip those out and put them on Instagram. So yeah, I hear you when you say unplugging from social media. Sometimes you'll see artists sometimes that will kind of dive down into a cave of their artwork for a year or two and then emerge with this project that they release. And it's like, where did this come from? A lot of Caldecott books are done that way, where the Children's Book Award for the premier Children's Book Award, Caldecott, and we didn't even know these people existed sometimes, but they've been busy working on the thing that they knew was what they should be working on, and it showed in the work, and the work emerged. And so
that's incredible. I'm going to end the live stream for today on that thought. Especially, I have one more book tip for all of you watching, picking up on what Will said. I'll put it in the comments later. I don't know the author, but it's called Perennial Seller, and it's exactly about that. How to create something that's lasting, that isn't just like an Instagram post that will disappear literally 24 hours later and no one will ever see it again, but to create kind of a classic, to create something that you are proud of, that adds something big to the world, like to create the best work you want to create. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work, and it's probably in conflict with that daily social media machine. So I'll put that book recommendation in the description as well. And I know Samantha has some incredible books. I have one of yours, that Draw Your Day. I have that book, and I know Will does classes on SBS Learn, and also has that book he showed before. And Tara, I think you have tutorials I've seen about like drawing bird feet. So there's, just from the artists you have today, tons and tons of ideas. If you want to get started, if you don't know what direction to go in, I would say just start. And by starting, you'll figure out what it is that you like to do. So maybe on day 30, you're somewhere completely different than where you thought you were gonna go. But you just gotta get in there and practice frequently, and that'll help you establish your skills and your style. So with that closing thought, thank you so much, all three of you. I think you shared so much wisdom, and I really enjoyed speaking to you, and hope you have a wonderful, happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.